Shalom Haverim, and welcome to Gam Vagam. This is our not regularly scheduled, actually. I don't really put these out all regularly scheduled, but we are focusing on politics today, not having our deep and meaningful conversations about Judaism. Instead, we are going to focus on something that could be entirely anti-Jewish or completely Jewish, depending on who you voted for, which is Donald Trump. And with me, I have my favorite Republican, Amanda Peterson. If you don't know Amanda, Amanda talks geopolitics. She is one of my personal favorites because I think that she approaches politics from the very same place that I do. She was one of the first friends that I had when I got into content creation. We've been on this roller coaster since October 7th, 2023. Eventually, we are going to be friends for like 5 years at some point. It's going to be really weird when that happens. But in the meantime, I'd love to bring her in. I'm excited to talk to her about Trump's first 100 days. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe it's almost been 2 years. And yeah, we're going to get to the point where like you're on CNN one day and I'm on some other thing. And it's like, oh yeah, we've known each other for years. It's from TikTok. So it's going to be kind of cool.
You're going to be on like
Uh,
Newsmax or something like that?
I don't know if I'm a Newsmax. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I don't want to block
OAN
anything
come
out.
in. Yeah.
I don't, I was going to say, I think I would even be more, I'm right of center, but like I tend to do better in audiences of like liberals rather than conservatives a lot. So I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
because you're like
I don't know if
reasonable.
they'd have me.
No, that's because
Oh,
you're
well,
like a
thank you.
reasonable person. And I think that like liberals are actually perfectly fine hearing a reasonable conservative. Um, and so, but there's just like not that many, I think, or they're not that many that are willing to go into liberal spaces or to explain things like through a liberal lens. But I think that if you people who are liberal like are looking for it, they're just looking for like the right voice.
Well,
So
thank you. Yeah,
maybe you
and
could be
you're one
like
of my
that.
favorite
Oh,
Democrats.
thank
So
you. Maybe you could be like the token conservative on like MSNBC, right? Because like you would get paid so much money,
I guess so. Yeah, be
right?
like the Scott Jennings, but
Yeah, I mean like
we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
well, so thank you for being here because like I said, I would love to get a check on Trump's first 100 days. And there's a lot that's happened. He's deported people. He has gone to the Middle East. He has attempted very many times to try to make peace in Ukraine and Russia. He has allowed Israel to do everything that they want. He has created a global economic catastrophe and also allowed for it to recover within like a week of itself. And so I think there's a lot of people that have very obviously polarized takes on it. And so I'm just curious from your perspective, as somebody who voted for Donald Trump, where do you fall on the maybe you can give a grade if you'd like, or you can kind of give any use any standard or rubric that feels appropriate.
It's interesting. I think if we're looking at, so I'm like a one issue voter on like national security, foreign policy. So on that front, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
On broader issues domestically, I think I'd probably give him a B minus to a C plus. On foreign policy, we're probably closer to B plus, A minus, you know? I don't know.
So why don't let's start with the let's start with the good stuff. Let's
Yeah.
start with the good stuff because
Yeah.
um, there's a lot of different ways to judge Trump, right?
Hmm.
Trump could either be doing well because he's doing the things that he's accomplishing the goals that he set out in his campaign. Like you can think that he could be doing well because he's just working on the things and he's keeping his campaign promises about how he would approach the his presidency, or he could be failing and he could have a horrible way because like he's just not doing what he thought or what he said he was going to do. So when you say that he has like a B plus A minus, where does that come from?
I think I, okay, how do I want to frame this? I think in terms of foreign policy, with the clear exception being like Russia, Ukraine, and I'm just kind of the opinion that I don't know that that is ever going to end. Like that just might be the most militarized conflict zone for like years and years and years to come. Um, So, with the exception of that, I think that I am very happy with what's going on in the Middle East with him. I'm very happy about, I view the tariff liberation day thing as like kind of testing the waters to decouple from China. And I think there's, it used to be, it used to be that people didn't even think that China was a competitor to, or not that they weren't even competitive with us, that they didn't have a, I mean, they're building up their navy and stuff in the Pacific and stuff. Like, I'm very hawkish on them, but like people thought that they didn't have any interest in like going against us. I think you can't say after they upped the upped things with the trade war that they aren't hostile to us at some way. And Besant had the secret meeting with them, and then now we seem to have some sort of a 90-day thing there. But I think that even just getting everybody on the same page of like, oh no, like they're going to be hostile, I think that that's really important. And I don't think that we could have had either that consensus opinion or even talks yielding what they are had Trump not done the crazy tariff thing. And I'm not like the biggest fan and thinking it's like 40 chess all of the time, but like I'm kind of the position of being so hawkish on China that I think that any amount of economic pain is probably worth it, in order to kind of establish like what's going to be going on in the new world order. I think bringing in like the Saudis once again, Biden tried to ice them out and then kind of brought them back in. Um, what he's doing in Syria to me is like kind of kicking China and Russia out of the Middle East and kind of filling that void. I think giving Israel kind of the freedom to do what it wants to do and like still keeping the diplomatic cover, still doing um, still sending all of the weapons, but not doing what the pro Israel and the anti Israel people seem to think is like, oh, Trump's just going to do everything for Israel. We're not doing that, but we're kind of giving them the power to do so. And I think that Israel's at a really, really interesting place. And I would love to talk more about you with that, or about that with you. Just kind of like being that they've kind of defeated the resistance axes, they kind of get to pick and choose where they go from here. Like, um,
Well, so
they
let's. I'm
kind of
gonna.
created a new paradigm. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
so I'm gonna. Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna chime in real quick because otherwise, if we
Yeah,
go around the whole world, um,
yeah.
so let me ask you. So where essentially, like, are you saying that the reason why he doesn't have an A plus, the reason why he has an A minus or a B plus, is basically because he has not. He said that he was going to end the Ukraine Russia war, and he hasn't. Is that like the biggest thing? Like, where is the gap between the B plus and the A plus for you?
Probably that. Probably that, and I would even like to see like a full decoupling from China. So I mean, that means like whole recession. We're not going to get that. So, but like that's probably the basis of me not being
And do you
as happy.
find that do you find that the right, or like that his where like MAGA, I don't think that you consider yourself like MAGA.
No,
Um
no.
but like, obviously the Republican Party is currently a fairly large tent where you have your, obviously MAGA Republicans, but then you have your neo-isolationists, and then you still have like your conservatives and so on. And so where do you find that the party is currently when it comes to him and let's say his foreign policy, general sense?
So I think his foreign policy vision that he just laid out in his speech in Saudi Arabia is kind of, it's funny because everybody said, "Oh, he's an isolationist." No, no, he's just rebranded neocon. No, I think what I think what he is kind of a perfect mesh of like Reaganite, H.W. Bush, realpolitik of like, hey, we're going to do business with people that aren't always the greatest guys, okay? Mixed with the George W. Bush of, but we're going to use we're going to lift people up too. And so I think it's kind of funny when people say, oh, the Republican Party's just completely changed. You can see elements of both of those things in that speech he just laid out, where he's like, we're not going to judge you anymore for some of your um, decisions. And I think that you could even extend that a little bit to allies and stuff.
No,
Like
I
one of the
think
things
that
that,
he's. I think
yeah,
I think you're right. There was some interesting conversation that I started to think about when it comes to how he's dealing with people, because like as somebody who is much more hawkish, or like especially kind of like a neocon when it comes to foreign policy of like democracy is an inherently better system, and everyone in the world deserves to be a citizen inside of a democracy. One thing that I certainly am, I think, coming back around to, at least for the time being, is that like that's not going to happen anytime soon in the Middle East. Like Syria, Assad just like crumbled, and that doesn't mean that like I'm in favor of like an Al Qaeda terrorist being in charge of Syria. But at the end of the day, like when I think about the UAE, when I think about Saudi Arabia, when I think about some of these places, it's a matter of okay, well, right now there's been so much chaos. Maybe it makes sense for the time being that like we need to focus first on stability and quiet before we can go. It's kind of like, higher, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where it's like, whatever. And so when it comes to foreign policy, like, yeah, like when everything is quiet, now we can start to focus on like capitalism and spreading of capitalism and spreading of democracy and these high ideals. But like when the world is in chaos, we just need to get back to zero that says like, okay, like before we focus on like democracy, like let's just get everybody like back on the same page and let's just be quiet for a little bit. And I think that's where a lot of people are right now, because that's what Biden created over his presidency.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I totally agree with you on that. And like, I think it was Hussein Abu Bakr Mansour who I don't remember if he wrote something or where I heard this. I think it was him who was talking about how, you kind of had the paradigm in the Middle East of like secular Baathism, if you really want to call
Yeah.
that secular or whatever. And then people experienced how brutal it was to live under Saddam and Hafez al-Assad, especially. And then you kind of had a transition to jihadism.
Mm.
And I think that kind of burnt out under, ISIS probably, but also the Arab Spring. And I now think that there's a lot of people in the Middle East who are like, okay, we don't want to be religious zealots anymore. We're not in favor of that. We don't want to go to the secular Baathism,
You
obviously. We're
really
not
think
going
that?
back to that.
You really think that like people in the Middle East don't want to be jihad? Like I'm not saying that like every single person in the Middle East wants to be terrorist, but like I don't know if like they want to be, if they don't want to be like religious zealots. I mean, we can see what's been going on in Syria against like the Druze and the Alawites and other ethnic minorities, against the Kurdish. Like I'm not so sure that like, especially it depends on what your definition of religious zealot is. Like
I
is
don't
it
think that we're going to see the same rise in jihadist terrorist groups like Al
okay?
Qaeda or ISIS anymore, is what I mean.
Got it.
I think that there's always going to be certain religious zealots. But like, I don't know. I mean, the Levant was historically pretty secular, honestly, up
Yeah.
until, I mean, and so I think that, there's another Hussein Abu Bakr Mansour thing where he was talking about how, like, really throughout the 1990s, at the beginning of the 90s, none of his aunts wore hijabs. And then by the end of the 90s, all of them wore hijabs, or it was something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of everybody kind of just culturally went there. And I think that now people are kind of open to culturally moving away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cautiously optimistic about what pops up in between. And I think that we're in a really good place now where I don't know if you saw the news, but like Russia is no longer going to be printing Syrian currency. Instead, it's going to go to the UAE.
Mm.
And so that vacuum of power that we left under Obama in Syria, where we just said, hey, Iran and Russia, you have at it, which then Iran used to
Right.
funnel
So
weapons
let's,
to Hezbollah.
yeah.
We're there not with boots on the ground, but we're just kind of letting Turkey be the muscle, which is problematic, but better than Iran, probably. And then, hey, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, you just dump a bunch of money in there. And like kind of my hope for that is I think Gaza's kind of a lost cause, but I'm kind of hoping the West Bank looks at recovering Syria in a year or two and says like, hey, why can't we have that?
So
You
let me
know?
ask you. Yeah. No. I totally. I hear where you're going. So going back to the part about where, because the focus on Trump, and so what I'm
Yeah.
wondering is, from your perspective, like, do you feel that, and both you and also like, what's your take on where the party is at? Because that's what
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
most
Sorry.
curious about. Because I'm not, as much as I've like done a good job of managing my algorithm to not be in any type of echo chamber. I would actually say my echo chamber is like far more like
Right wing.
anti yeah no it's well no it's actually
Oh,
like no, my algorithm is filled with a bunch of people that hate Jews and hate Israel, and so like
oh.
I have to like make a separate list on X of like pro-Israel and Jewish accounts to be like, where do I find like the people that I agree with.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but like what I'm definitely not in is like the right wing spaces. I don't have a diverse amount of like true like right wing America first type of spaces and type of creators. And so what I'm wondering is, based upon the algorithm that you're in and kind of like what you're hearing from various sources, do you think that they think that he's doing a good job and that the direction that he is taking the Middle East is both positive and also like within the scope of what he said that he wanted to do.
Yeah. So I do, okay. Trump is such a dominant figure right now in the party. Kind of whatever he wants to do, the majority people are going to support is kind of the way I see it. Um, they will, I mean, Trump says something super hawkish on China and oh no, this is all 4D chess and China and Trump's doing the best thing on China. And then he kind of backs off of it and then it's like, oh, this
Part of the
is the
plan.
plan. And it's like that's kind of where most people are right now with Trump. And so I don't see that. I think like look, Trump has been through so much that the hate towards him is baked in and the people who are open to him give him so much of the benefit of the doubt. I really, unless the economy tanks, I really think his approval ratings are going to stay where they are or just kind of creep up and up and up. And even when he leaves office, it's going to be like, well, what do you think Trump would want? And I'm kind of worried about that because Trump's going to keep giving his opinions. And so there's that. And I don't know that anybody who would take over would really have the same like command of the base. But there, yeah, I mean, there's elements of like kind of anti-Israel now on the right, or elements of like super hawkish. Um, I think the super hawks are understanding that they're probably going to get more under Trump than they would on anyone else. You know, like I just think that the electorate right now is just so war weary and stuff that we're not going to be doing any true foreign interventions or anything like that. And so
Yeah,
pushing for
so
Iran strikes is the best that they can get. But yeah, that's what I
well,
would say
that's
about the party.
so. I'm curious what your take is because we were both very critical of Joe Biden during the aftermath of October 7th and his approach to Iran and the Houthis and the whole axis. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
continuation of Obama's. And now, though, Trump is theoretically, we don't really know if he's going for a deal that looks exactly like the JCPOA or even like a worse deal than the JCPOA, or if Witkoff, with the whole thing of like, oh yeah, we're enriching, it's going to be 3%. Oh no, they're not going to have anything and this or that, and it's all a part of the 4D chess or whatever. But like when you look at Trump and you're looking at him even saying like we're going to look to make a deal, do you think that it is a part of the game? Like it doesn't have to be 4D chess. It can literally just be like regular game theory that says like he wants to put it out there that he tried, knowing that they're probably going to say no, which then gives him the credence to uh give him it gives him the credibility to bomb them, or do you think that he really does want to make a deal?
I have a complicated response to that because, on one hand, I do think that that game theory component exists. I think that there is such an isolationist push in some parts of the right that, like, he really does need to say, like, okay, I tried. But then I also think that there's a level of when we talk about um, I kind of was getting annoyed too when people were talking about like India, Pakistan, and they would immediately just be like, well, India's Israel in this equation, or India's, and then I saw the anti Israel people be like, India or Israel's Pakistan, or whatever. And it's like, no, like it's its own conflict, and it's actually pretty complicated. And like, you can't just look at it through the lens of the Israeli Palestinian conflict, actually. The same is like when we talk about this deal, it seems like, I mean, to me, when I learn about the Iran deal and try and look at that, Mark Dubowitz, the CEO of Foundation for Defensive Democracies, is huge Iran hawk, and he's been saying the whole time, like, the deal that they're talking about publicly, like, I support that. I support those talks. And I also think that, like,
Wait,
just
really?
with
Because I
how,
thought that he
oh yeah,
was.
oh no,
I
oh
feel like he's
he,
been saying that like
look at his
Iran's
pin tweet.
Iran's economy has been tanking. The valuation of their currency is going down. Like, why are we even engaging with them? Like, am I missing something? Or
Look at his pin tweet. His pin tweet is like, I'm 100% lockstep with what Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump, everyone's saying, which is like no enrichment, no sunset clauses, and all of that. And like Iran's in a more vulnerable position right now. We don't know what the
Hmm.
deal is, but to me, if Dubowitz is saying that, I'm open to a deal. I would I would probably favor strikes to a deal. Although, if you look at like kind of if we believe that the campaign against the Houthis was not all that successful, do we believe that we could be successful in strikes on Iran's facilities. That's a thought I have now too. The other thing I'm thinking about though is like the problem with the JCPOA is the side deals that were done with that allowed
Yeah.
Iran to like really rearm and grow the proxies. And so where Israel was at on October 7th was Iran was a week or two away from a bomb, and they had all these proxies that could just strike, 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 and whenever Israel threatened to fight back, Iran could just threaten a nuclear bomb, and then it would have just
Yeah.
gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was worse not just for Israel, but all of our partners in the region. Now Israel's kind of gutted that proxy network so well that even if Iran were to get a bomb, and I do not want them to get one, it's not nearly the same threat level, and I still don't want them to get one,
Do
but it's
you?
it's a
Yeah.
completely different system over there right now. And I actually think that that's going to make it kind of difficult for Israel to navigate moving forward, because if we want to add to the Abraham Accords, kind of the thing that Israel brought to the Abraham Accords was like, hey, we'll protect you from this threat that you view as existential as well, the Iranians, and we've built this up. Now that that proxy network's kind of gutted, I think that they're going to need to bring more to the table
Oh, I
to
think
sweeten
I
the
think they're
deal.
I think they're fine. I think they're fine because the amount of
Oh, really? I
yeah, no,
disagree.
the technology, the defense technology that they offer, the civil technology that they offer, also just like their markets in general, like from a business perspective, like Israel at the end of the day is the corridor or is like kind of like the gatekeeper to the West. I think that there are probably going to end up being a lot of people in Europe and in America who like we think of Europe as like a crazy anti-Semitic, place and whatever it is, anti-Israel, which like there's certainly a lot of parts to it, but frankly, like I'm more and more convinced that I think that actually like the average European who is like maybe a center right European inside of Europe, like they see what's going on inside of their own country, but like the left has truly taken over at a cultural level that they cannot speak out and they don't have the type of platform that would allow them to say that like there are other voices in there. And so I think that there's still going to be people who want to deal with Israel at a business level, and so that may or may not be all that comfortable dealing with the Saudis directly or to the UAE directly. And certainly what I would say is if Syria does start to recover, and let's say Lebanon also starts to recover, like these places are still going to be like really weary. And I think that Israel again is kind of is going to benefit from having their foot in two spaces. And also remember that like the Saudis and the UAE already wanted like something with Israel that was far more than just defense. It was economic based and like it was like cultural based and everything of the sort. So I don't think that like Israel needs to like pump themselves up or like feels like that they need to offer something separate from the defense because I think and the security issue because I think that there's plenty already.
So I don't disagree with you about the economic part of that. I think that they still do want to do a deal with like the economic parts of it. But I was listening to one of my favorite people to follow on like this conflict. He wrote one of my favorite books on it, The Ark of a Covenant. It's Walter Russell Mead. He has a podcast that's done by Tablet Magazine, and he
Oh,
kind of talked about like, is there a rift between Trump and Netanyahu? And he was kind of, I really align, and a lot of what I'm saying is kind of aligned with what he was saying, which is like, look, the Saudis and stuff, they still want to do a deal with Israel, but does Israel really want to do a deal with them? I'm
yeah,
paraphrasing, but
yeah, yeah.
but what I'm saying is I think Bibi wants to do a deal. I think a lot of Israelis want to do a deal. I think there's parts of Bibi's coalition maybe who want to expand into the West Bank more, and I don't think that the Saudis are going to co-sign that. You
I
know what I
agree.
mean?
I
Or
agree
I,
with that. Yeah.
yeah,
The
and it's
challenge
stuff
right
like that.
now, the challenge right now with Netanyahu, is the fact that his coalition is he is truly in a rock and a hard place, which is if he
Hmm.
doesn't do the things that his coalition wants, the coalition dissipates. And though the more that he does it, the more that he does what the coalition wants, the more that he gets separated from literally everybody else. And so you basically have
Right.
Ben Gavir, Smotrich, and these like I don't know, 10 to 15 or however, whatever people like controlling the entire world. And it all comes down to basically the fact that Netanyahu refuses like if Netanyahu just said like, well, forget you guys, like I'm gonna go with Yair Lapid, or I'm gonna go with like my political opponents, and my political opponents, are willing to come with me and set aside this in order to get you out. Then like that would solve everything. But like their egos, and it's something that I remember
Yeah.
when he got elected after the Naftali Bennett coalition broke down after like a year, which was like Netanyahu is going to be the end of Israel. And like he almost was, frankly, if like weirdly enough, had it not been for October 7th, just because of all this internal like stuff was
Yeah.
happening. But aside from that, like I actually kind of have a hot take about the Houthi thing. When people were like, Trump said these things about like, well, why didn't we get, like, how could we do this or whatever? I actually think that it was a combination between because the restrainers or the neo-isolations, whoever you want to call in there, I think they have been leaking a ton of stuff to the media. And I think that the media, who is anti-Trump, right, is more than happy to print anything from the people who are like from people like that, because it shows there's discontent, it shows that they're in disarray, it embarrasses Trump. And so I don't think that like I don't think that he basically was like, oh, I thought that, I think that the star plan in Yemen was unsuccessful. I think that in general, like he found some leverage, he found a way to make a deal, and he made the best deal that he could. I think it's unfortunate that he decided not to include Israel in it, but nonetheless, like he did, and now the leakers are taking advantage of it, and the press is taking advantage of it. But and that's where my problem though with the Iran stuff is, which is like, and where he's going to split more with Netanyahu, because Netanyahu's like number one goal in his life, his mission, is get rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities. And if Trump makes any type of situation, or he makes any type of decision that does not lead to the bombing of these nuclear plants and these nuclear facilities, it's only going to make the rift worse.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree that like there's the leaking component for sure, and I agree that Netanyahu does not want any type of deal with the Iranians. And I think that it'll just be interesting to see. I don't. I think that Trump's going to allow Bibi to do what he wants to do with the remaining the Gaza, or like
Oh, he
keeping the
already
Gaza war
has, yeah.
going. Yeah, he already has, but I don't think he wants it to go on. And like,
No.
eh,
But
and
I almost think that that's why he's willing to let Netanyahu do what he wants, because he knows that if he just lets Netanyahu do whatever, it's going to end far more quickly, which frankly was our argument to begin with when the
yeah,
war started, right? Like we can't really be upset because when the war started, we were just like, Biden, stop getting in the middle, stop meddling, just let Israel do what it needs to do. And you want the war to end. That's what you ultimately want. And telling them that a ceasefire is just around the corner is literally the worst way to end the war. And I think that
yeah.
whether Trump gets that or he just doesn't really care about the lives of Gazans, either way, like that's ultimately what's going to lead to the end of the war.
From what I hear, I think that they want a deal. The Trump administration wants a deal, but they're not going to force Bibi's hand. And I wonder how much of domestic politics comes into that too. Like when you think of like the biggest base of the Republican Party being evangelical Christians who are so
Yeah,
pro-Israel, right? Like they call Netanyahu Israel's Winston Churchill,
yeah,
and they're like, so when are they taking Judea and Samaria? That's very different than the Democrat base now. That's like Israel's an apartheid state. So,
right.
and I still don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's really the Democrat base, but some of those polls are coming out now that like 60% disapprove of Israel. So I don't know. So I don't know how much of that is domestic politics, but I think that Trump is doing something admirable when it comes to Israel, which is just like letting them choose. You know what I mean? Like, Bibi, if you can get Ben Gvir and Smotrich to not do settlement expansion and instead normalize with the Saudis, like, let's do it.
Yeah,
Great. But like my outside opinion is not going to help that probably at
right.
all.
Well, so speaking of domestic politics, so let's bring it back
Mm-hmm.
stateside. Um, you said that And well, let's talk about the tariffs and the economy, because the economy was going bad and his disapproval ratings were going up. And then the stock market recovered everything that it lost during Liberation Day. And then the economy started to pump back up. And so his disapproval ratings are back down. And so what I'm wondering is, from, again, your perspective, I don't know how to, to not use the same term, but like to decouple this idea of like, MAGA is going to like Trump no matter what he does, right? They're going to figure out, they're going to
Mhm.
twist it in their head or whatever. But like the general party, how are they feeling about him when it comes to the economy? Like, do they think that, are they still talking about, why am I missing the word now? When prices go up, inflation. I don't know. I just said it. It's
Inflation,
Friday,
yeah.
everybody. Please don't hate
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But like, are people still complaining about inflation? Or are people still concerned about this whole idea of factory jobs? Do they believe him? Where's the party at with his economic plan?
Okay, I'm gonna break this into a couple things. When it comes to the factory and manufacturing jobs, I do think that we need to reshore certain critical industries here,
No,
or at
no,
least
that
build
no,
them
I
up.
agree with you.
Shipbuilding.
Yeah, no.
No,
Once
I know,
okay,
but let me just say that.
okay,
But
okay.
okay, so I do believe that. But this idea that the tariff thing was just gonna make everybody blue collar factory workers again, I think Trump knew that wasn't true. I think everybody, maybe except for Howard Lutnick and Peter Navarro, knew that that was not true. But that's an incredibly popular message in the blue wall states, which Trump needs to win in order to keep the coalition going. So if he wants JD Vance to be president after, it's very popular there. And that's why you had Gretchen Whitmer going to the White House and then covering her face with a folder and all of that. And because it's popular, like that idea, I think is like really popular. It's
Well,
like
it's
you say that,
popular,
but
I
it's
think, at
not
the
maybe
hold on a
true.
sec, because the I saw a poll, and I didn't look too deep in the poll, so I could be wrong. But I saw a poll that was like 75% of people believe that like we should, build our factories, back here in the United States, and then it was like 25% of those people said that they would actually work in those factories. And so what I'm
Well, exactly.
wondering
That's what
is,
I'm saying.
so what I'm
That's
saying,
what I'm
right,
saying. It's
but
politically popular to say it.
yeah, so what I'm wondering though is, if how is the base reacting, and maybe it's too soon, right? Maybe 100 days is too soon, but like, do you think that the party is going to accept that as a political reality, like as a reality, where they say like, well, of course, he was never going to bring back the factories because nobody wants to work in the factories, but I'm glad that he said so because we need to move in the right direction? Or are they going to punish him?
No, so what's going to, this is what I always thought the tariffs were. He's going to announce the tariffs. We're going to see a brief dip. We're going to pass the big, beautiful bill. He's going to get all these trade deals, which are basically going to drive headlines and arms sales to our Asian counterparts. That's another big part of this, or to the Saudis. So, like what he just came back from the Gulf companies, I think that 600 trillion invested, or 600 billion. I don't even know the number. So, the trillions of dollars are being invested by these Gulf countries. That's just going to drive headlines. I don't know if it's going to materialize in like full jobs, right? But Trump's going to be able to say, look, I just brought all this money in. And in the same way, he's going to say, well, look, we're bringing manufacturing back. And there's going to be certain things where it's like, yes, this company is going to build this plant in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, honestly. Or certain Sunbelt states, Arizona, I think is where NVIDIA built, New Mexico, maybe, kind of Nevada, whatever. And it's going to drive headlines. And some people, yes, will get jobs at those. It's not going to be nearly as meaningful as what Trump says it will be, but it'll be something, I guess. And he'll be able to point to it. And what I do not understand, and I'm begging Democrat strategists like to realize from this, is like, when they say this of like, oh, who wants manufacturing jobs? It's like, to me, the people who idealize those jobs coming back are the ones whose like grandparents or parents worked in a factory, and they're
Yeah.
not going to work in it now, but they like, oh no, life was better then. I'd like to bring that back. And when Democrats say, oh my God, it's never going to happen, and then Kamala Harris shows up to a rally in 2 years with a camo hat on in front of a factory, like that they need
It
to
feels like
figure
it's
out a way
far
to
more of a
mesh
cultural.
that.
It feels like it's far more of a
Yeah,
cultural issue. Like it's a part of the culture war far more than it is like an economic thing, because it's all
totally,
about class
totally.
and everything of the sort. But like, so when you said earlier on that like he has a C plus B minus, so that must mean that you obviously must be unhappy with him economically or domestically or whatever it was. But like, so
Not
where,
unhappy.
but like, I mean, there's a clear reason why you gave him a B plus A minus type, right?
Yeah.
And this time you're C, if you're thinking C plus, where did you downgrade him?
I think that some of the rollouts have been messy. Some of it's kind of funny, honestly, but some of it's kind of messy. I mean, I think does he need to tweet about Taylor Swift today? It's like really funny. Did
Did
you
he
see
tweet?
that?
Did he tweet about?
He said ever since I said Taylor Swift is not something, she's no longer hot, and I'm like, why are you in UAE right now tweeting about Taylor Swift? Like, what are we? But it's like kind of funny, honestly. But does he need to do that? Maybe not. Or like some of the graphics he's tweeting of like the Ghibli thing of the fentanyl dealer being deported. It's like, okay, it's a little funny. Do we need to do that? Um, I think, yeah. I mean, I'm super happy with like no like border crossings down like
Yeah,
97%
I
or
mean that's.
something
I
like
mean,
that.
look,
Like that's
on immigration,
phenomenal.
everybody is very happy about everybody is very happy about what he's done at the border. Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was even like when his disapproval ratings were, at their relative lowest, like they took that massive dip after Liberation Day. The only issue that he was still had approval of was immigration, which again, like the Democrats just absolutely wrecked themselves by focusing all of their attention
yeah.
on like a dude that ended up having like a really terrible background
Yeah.
instead of
Oh
like
yes.
focus instead of being like, oh hey guys, should we go after the thing that everybody likes him for, or should we go after him the thing that he's currently weak? Oh, like let's go down to El Salvador and take pictures with this dude. That is what we should spend our time and energy on. That's the message, right? Is that we're going to go with asylum seekers who have like a loose affiliation or a strong association, I don't really know, with a MS-13.
That was insane. That was incredible, right? Like that
It's,
was something.
I
That was
think what's so fascinating, and we probably need to. I don't even know if we should have any more podcast episodes about how to fix the Democrats because I don't think there's fixing them at this juncture. I really don't. Like they've missed so many opportunities. They really have. They've missed the opportunities on the immigration. They messed that up. They messed up on the tariffs and the economy. They messed up when like it's hilarious about the fact that they can't actually dunk on him about taking a $400 million like quasi bribe from Qatar because
Jed.
yeah, because they take because they're more than happy to allow billions of dollars of Qatari money to go into the academics, and they have been railing against Republicans, calling them Islamophobic and calling them racist or whatever it is, because they just refuse to they refuse to like let go of any of their sacred cows. And so like it's wild just how like the fact that he came in with like a double digit lead, then he gave it up with Elon Musk, with Doge. I mean, like he wrecked his lead, and and the fact that there was such a little error for margin of error for the House, the Democrats would actually have had a chance to take over, despite how terrible they were, and yet they continue to shoot themselves in each toe until they can like literally just shoot off their entire foot.
I wonder what's going to come of that though, because I was kind of thinking about this, and I don't know if you have opinion. Sorry if this is like going a little bit off topic, but like that book coming out next week from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson about the Biden mental decline and like the cover up.
You want my hot take? Because I was thinking about this today.
Yeah, yeah.
My hot take is that it is going to get so little coverage.
Oh, really?
I think that the media is going to treat it the way, because here's the thing. The media ignored it. The media ignored Biden at the moment. So how does it benefit them to give light to what they got wrong? Nobody in the media, in the traditional media, is going to do that. And so they are going to, unlike Trump, right? Because I was thinking about this, like, I had, and I think we might have talked about this, and which was, all you need is that one person. You just need that one insider to go and be like, oh yeah, like we did some fucked up shit to hide Biden stuff. And you're like, that's it. As soon as he starts to make his dollar, everybody else is. But here's the thing. It worked with Trump because the media was looking to bash Trump. The media was just waiting for the first person, and then because that first person made so much money and got so much attention, everybody else was like, well, heck yeah, like I want to get my bag. But this time, I don't. And again, Jake Tapper, like he's not like just this like he's just he's a media guy, right? It's not like a senior advisor is coming out and saying like, okay guys, I know everything, right? It's the media is going to say we don't want to show everybody how we got this wrong and how we were frankly like involved in the cover up.
So it's funny that you're saying this because this book is being covered all over right wing media, but it's like, how dare
Exactly.
Jake Tapper write this book?
Exactly.
But like, okay, so
That's
this
what I'm
was
saying.
this was,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all around right wing, right? But the Washington Post isn't talking about. The New York Times isn't covering it. Like in the same. Remember when who was, I don't even remember who the first one was, but there were 5 different people that came out with a book as soon as the Trump presidency ended, and everybody just MSNBC, CNN, New York Times, they went after. Why? Because they were like, haha, see, we were right and you were wrong. This time is, we can't talk about this. If we talk about this, everyone's going to bring up the fact that we had convinced everybody that we went out and said, no, we spoke to Joe Biden and he was perfectly fine and he was so sharp and this or that. They can't do it. And so if they don't do it, they're not going to make the money. And so if they don't make the money, they're going to look at the sales and be like, you know what? There's nothing in it for me. I can't sacrifice my entire career to get 500 book sales.
You know what's really interesting about that though is like there's been this paradigm forever, as long as I've been in politics, where it's like if the left wing doesn't cover media does not cover anything, or like legacy media, dominant media, whatever you want to call it, if they don't cover it and the right wing media goes crazy with that, they can just say, oh, well, see, it's all a right wing conspiracy. And to be fair, a lot of right wing media really overplays some of these things.
Correct.
But like that's what they tried to do with the Biden mental decline, and like they were just like, oh, that's just right wing media craziness, and then oh, that's just them going nuts. They don't know what they're talking about. They're all crazy, and then everybody sees them at the debate, and it's like, well, I think the right was onto something.
But there's a reason why they haven't covered it. There's a reason why, if you think about it from this perspective, if they were going to cover it like journalists, like they're doing their job, they would have been investigating it since the end of his presidency, right? But if you think about it from this perspective, there's a reason why they never asked Kamala about her involvement with covering up his mental decline. And so
Brett Baer did. He was the only one.
Right. But Brett Baer is a conservative, right?
Right?
And because they knew that if they went after Kamala, they know what the truth is. They know what the truth is. And so there's no incentive for them to pump this book up. And if there's no incentive for this book to pump this book up, then it's not going to get the sales. And so therefore other Democratic insiders who could tell more theories and tell more stories are going to realize that they don't have the type of reputation and the type of wealth that Jake Tapper already has. And so there's no incentive for them. They can't burn their career with the entire Democratic Party for 1,000 book sales or for 10,000 book sales that frankly they're going to see very little of overall. And especially if they have to almost always align themselves with right-wing media correspondents, it makes it even worse. And so we're just in this place where we're never going to get the type of coverage on this that it deserves.
So this is my point though with this is like, okay, I thought that they would maybe have to shift that paradigm, and especially if Tapper's on the book, even though he was one of the worst ones covering it up, in my opinion, but whatever. Alex Thompson was fine. But how are the Democrats going to recover trust with the voter if they've never even publicly said like, hey, we got this one wrong, guys?
They won't.
And so if they don't recover trust, do you think that that's a split off into like 2 parties, or what is it? Because in my opinion, and no offense, and I love my Democrat friends, our tent is getting too big. What are we anymore? Like, I don't know.
So here's so let's go back to get back onto the topic of Trump and how he's performed, which is like, it's interesting because every Republican senator sent a letter to Trump saying that they don't believe in making a deal with Iran. And again, whether or not that was like actually coordinated behind the scenes, I don't think that Trump could have like figured that out, but like certainly Marco Rubio could have figured that out, or any of the Republican senators. So every single one other than Rand Paul signed that letter. And you are seeing, right? And I think that you are seeing some in this, like, whether it's like I think there's a tax bill going on, and a lot of Republicans in the House are saying like that they need certain things, and like they're making their
The
Trump,
salt cap. Oh my God.
they're Trump, they're making their cases to Trump as loyalists to say like, Donald, like I need some help here, and I think that clearly somebody inside of his administration is convincing him to like stay off of it because otherwise it will cost them the House. And so what I am wondering then again, goes back to how does the party feel about him and where they're at right now, because perhaps he's going to get it done, he's not going to get it done. If you had to make your guess, like is the party going to be behind his people in 2026?
I think, yeah, I again, pending clear economic like catastrophe, I think there's enough indicators in the economy right now that things are not going too badly or they're actually improving. Like, and then there's also, I mean, this is like the whole Biden presidency. There were good indicators and bad indicators, and the Biden people would be like, "Oh my God, see, it's all great," and it's like, well, there's some
But
people don't feel that way.
at what point because we going back, let's go back to the tariffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the factory jobs, because the factory jobs that aren't coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Trump says, I'm going to bring back factory jobs. And at some point, if he doesn't bring back the factory jobs, what portion of the Republican Party as of now is who's not like the MAGA crazies, who's going to think, whatever it is, who's going to blame somebody else? At what point do they say, he told me that he was going to bring manufacturing back to this country. I still don't have a manufacturing job. Now, does that mean that they're going to vote for Democrat? Maybe, maybe not, right? Because again, Trump isn't on the ballot here. It's going to be their individual congressman. But if their individual congressman who's a Republican and a Trump supporter, and what happens when that person says, I criticize, it makes a public statement that says, yes, I am critical of President Trump for not bringing back the manufacturing jobs that he told us that he was going to. And so what happens to that Republican?
Yeah, so there's a couple things with that. Well, first of all, when it comes specifically to manufacturing jobs, being that there's that gap between people who think we should bring them back and people who actually would want to work them.
Right.
As long as all those people who would actually work them can get good paying manufacturing jobs, I think that it's a moot point. I don't think that somebody like a Nick Fuentes or some, I don't even know, people who are like, yeah, we bring it back, but I don't want to work it. I don't think he's going to be like that. And I don't like him either, but I don't know why that's the person that came to mind when I was bringing that up. When it comes to Congress members, it's interesting because Trump has a higher approval rating than most congressional Republicans, and that's the opposite of in his first term. Most, like the Republican Party or congressional Republicans, had a higher approval rating than Trump. Now it's flipped. So how willing are these members to flip, and how willing are Trump's weird social media board of directors, aka Charlie Kirk, Tucker Carlson, and Don Jr., how willing are they to go after some of these Republicans? And if we start seeing a war in the party, it seems like we're keeping things together for the most part, and I think we will keep things together as long as Susie Wiles is the chief of staff.
For sure.
And I think if she goes out, we're done.
Well, what's going to happen? So here's a better question. The tariffs and the Liberation Day and everything showed us that there's essentially, in the short term, and unfortunately you have to look at short term when you are in American politics, for better or worse. In order to bring back manufacturing to the United States, you need to have short-term pain, right? You need to put up these tariffs. Mm-hmm. You need to do all of these things, right? That short-term pain is reflective in economic pain. It's reflective in lower stock market, which again, like some people are like, oh, how many people are really affected by the stock market? Yeah, well, your 401k is affected by the stock market. Or even if you don't have a 401k, right? If you don't have any investments whatsoever in the stock market because of whatever reason, which many blue collar workers don't have, and for whatever reason, but if a company's stock, if a CEO's stock goes down because of the tariffs, they have to go answer to their board of directors. So they're going to figure out, what do I do in order to get my stock back up by the end of next quarter or by the end of this quarter so I keep my job? Well, they're going to cut jobs, right? They're going they're going to respond to it. So there is an indirect impact. So going back to my question,
for sure.
which is, if Trump wants to bring back manufacturing, which was a promise, and people are waiting for these manufacturing jobs. But in order to do that, you need to create the short-term economic pain. That short-term economic pain is then reflective in lower disapproval ratings, and therefore the Congress starts to put up again. Those two start to come into conflict with one another.
Yeah, I don't think we're going back to the same. I don't think we're doing Liberation Day 2.0. At least I hope we're not. Um, I think what's going to happen is we're going to have quick succession, one after the other, of these trade deals being announced, and the trade deal is going to be, oh my God, you've never seen a deal this big, you've never seen a deal this good, and it's going to have this sort of
So then how
whatever
does he bring back the manufacturing?
investment.
So then
How
how
does
does
he
he
bring?
bring back manufacturing?
He won't.
Okay.
He won't.
So then
But
so
I think
essentially
I've been
is
saying
he
that he won't.
so then okay, no, that's I appreciate the honesty. And so does that mean though essentially though are you admitting that like for the most part the people who are saying that or he's making a gamble that it's better for him to keep posturing about manufacturing because he believes that the majority of people of his party, not just his base, but his party is going to remain with him, even if he doesn't bring
Yeah.
back the manufacturing jobs. And so, but on the other hand, they will leave him if the economy tanks, which would happen if he tries to actually bring back the manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, I think the manufacturing jobs is a microcosm or like again, like there's a big gap between people who want to work the jobs and
Right.
the people who think we should bring them back. And so as long as that those people who want them to get the jobs and they're well paying or whatever, I think it's fine. To me, I think the bigger thing, yeah, I don't think we're doing. I think he's going to keep doing the deals. And oh, you've never seen an economy this great. And to be fair, I do think if we start doing these trade deals where this American company is able to sell this much more, like we will see an economic boost from that, in my opinion. Like I think that the economy probably, I think we'll get a rate cut, so people are going to be able to buy homes more and stuff, and then I think we'll get um or refinance if they bought them with interest rates high. And my mom is a realtor for a Berkshire Hathaway affiliate, and they've been predicting before Liberation Day, like, oh no, we think we'll get a rate cut next year. We're seeing deflation kind of happen, although Walmart just announced that they're going to increase prices. Certain prices are coming down, certain are going up. We'll have to see.
I mean, I'll say
I'm a
this:
little
like
worried
there are
about.
houses around in my neighborhood. I've never seen more. Like in the last 5 years, there are more houses on the market now than I've seen in 5 years.
Oh, really?
I mean, just like it's completely anecdotal. I mean, no, that's not true. I have my real estate agent like sends out a newsletter, and I've seen and he's said that like the active that like there's active markets and they're up from last year, but just anecdotally in my neighborhood, which is kind of like a neighborhood mostly for like starter homes and stuff like that. In just probably the last few months, I have seen 4 or 5 homes go on the market, while for the previous like year plus, there was nothing. There was nothing. So I think it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I think like if we start to see, I don't, I don't know what's going to happen with like prices and stuff, but I mean, I don't know where I live. Gas prices are down like 40 cents.
So yeah, no,
So
no, it's true. So
yeah,
all right, so to kind of like to wrap things up, then
yeah.
overall, you would say let's say on a binary scale, are you happy or unhappy with Trump and through the first 100 days?
I'm happy so far.
Okay.
Cautiously optimistic for the
Cautiously.
future. What do you? But I want to know. What do you think?
Well, I don't want to go too. I wanted to go too much longer. But what
Yeah.
I would
Sorry.
say is like, I think it's right now it's very tough for me to judge, to give like my full thing because his main issue is immigration, and it's it's weird. It's probably the biggest, one of the most important topics and subjects in American politics that I have pretty much no hot take on. I have no conviction on. I have no hard rock opinions on. It's one of those things where like I really see both sides, to a degree, obviously, but I also don't know enough about like immigration itself, like the processing of it and everything, and also it's so multifaceted around asylum seekers, and legal immigration, illegal immigration, different visas, H1, HB1 or whatever it is, and all this kind of stuff. And then there's also like the crime, the national security impact, and then also like there is very much like the fact that people are coming here to try to work and to make a life out of themselves and to achieve the American dream. because like they're coming from Venezuela or they're coming from, Guatemala, and they're just like, I want to go and I'm trying to immigrate. So like it's just one of those things where, and then of course, like anybody can twist the numbers around immigration of like, oh well, they pay taxes, but they also take from this, and they're in the public schools and this or that or whatever. They take their health care, but they do this and they do that. They do sales tax. Oh well, what about the avocado farms? And do you want your avocados to be $10 a piece? So there's so many things that like I personally think that anybody who has like a super strong opinion about immigration is probably only looking at it through a very narrow viewpoint. And so to me, it's a matter of like you have to pick apart each part of the immigration debate one by one because you can't address immigration as a whole. And so for me, I don't really care. I don't really care about immigration because it's just up in the air. Am I happy about the fact that he's like deporting, probably like mothers who have not done a single wrong thing in the world? No, like I'm not. I think I'm pretty unhappy about that. I think that's pretty disgusting. Also, like I think that they're using the excuse around anti-Semitism in order to deport like kids who are on student visas like for no reason, and I know that is happening because like it is happening, and so like that's not great. And also like I have friends who are like nervous about leaving the country because their immigration status is like complicated and complex, and so like they just don't want to put themselves in that situation again. People who like are very supportive of some of the things that he's doing outside of immigration. So to me, I kind of like going back to what you were talking about with the rollouts of things and how he's approaching it. I would say that like his overall goal around like immigration is like I have become, I guess, more hawkish on immigration than I was prior to 2023. But I would say is that he's pretty much he's ruining himself, and he's making it hard to support the mission because of how he's conducting himself and the immoral actions he's taking, while doing the moral actions. If he was approached it from a much more like nuanced perspective and like didn't deport mothers with children, like that would make it a lot easier to deport like the people that we should be deporting. So like that's on that front. The economy, I would say like it's the first 100 days. You can't do much. I think we can do we should have a separate conversation about tariffs and about how we kind of like look at what we should be looking at for the economy going forward, because I have changed a lot of my opinions about free trade and certain things. And again, though, like so much of that is like not even in the president's purview. It's not even possible, except when you just throw out like massive tariffs on like literally everybody. Like that's the one time that the president has like a major impact, like cause and effect on the stock market and the economy. But overall, like the economy is pretty ginormous. Foreign policy wise, I have found myself back and forth as well with like overall mission versus like how he's going about it. I think I've come down so far on like 7.5 out of 10, and mostly it's because it's a big two. Like that 2.5 is really like what are you doing even talking with you? Like, why is the Islamic Republic even still a regime right now? Like that's a big giant hole. I have very mixed feelings about how he's engaging with Syria, and then also I still don't like his position on Ukraine and Russia. But honestly, like when it comes to Israel specifically, like other than my like little tiff about him with like the Houthis, like I think he's obviously giving Israel everything that they could want. And then frankly, like probably like where he's a 10 out of 10 is is Jew hatred and anti-Semitism here in America. Like there's nothing to be upset about when it comes to that. And I'll fight anybody on whether or not. The worst line I ever hear from someone is like, oh no, I think that he's so much worse for us because everything that he's doing is only going to make people resent us. And I'm like, they resent us anyways. They already do. Like there's nothing to be done. So like, sorry, like I plan on kicking out I'm not going to let the Jew haters, remain in school and remain in this country just so that somebody else doesn't resent me over there.
Yeah.
So overall,
the only
yeah.
thing I worry about with that, because I hear what you're saying with like the student visa thing. The only thing I worry about is like I don't want this to become a political football where like every 4 years, if a Democrat wins, it's like now we let in all the anti-Semitic Arabs, and then oh no, now we're super pro-Israel, and like it's such a niche issue. At the end of the day, Jews are 2% of the country, Arabs are 1% of the country. Like it's so outsized in political processes. I really hope, but I no, I totally agree. Like
Yeah.
it's so nice to have the moral clarity of like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. Like
Yeah.
it's no, that's
To
nice.
me, I would say that like the way that I could summarize it is like because I am frankly like just so focused on the issues surrounding Israel and the Jewish community in America, I have frankly like blocked out so much of the stuff around immigration, around the tariffs, and everybody is commenting on it. Everybody cares about it, and it's like every single day is a month for for people, and like it that's been how it has been for me since October 7th, and so we're actually doing well in on that front, and so I'm going to take my wins and I'm going to focus on that before I ever focus on anybody else. And people can criticize me for not caring about immigrants. People can criticize me for not caring about, the economy and, or the healthcare people, people, whatever it is, that's fine. But they didn't care about Jews for the, since October 7th, and they still don't care about Jews. So I'm going to care about me. And where I think that he's doing very well is in Israel and for the most part on geopolitics, for at least the Middle East. And he's doing exceptionally well, and I'm exceptionally happy when it comes to his take on anti-Semitism. And when I feel like in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that like I feel like we're out of this zone, I'll start to look more deeply into how satisfied or unsatisfied I should be, or happy or unhappy I should be about him with everything else.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
it is
Another
very
100 days. It's gonna be a
wow.
century. It
This
feels like.
can we just like you know what I like? I'm going to say this last thing before we say goodbye, which is if there's one thing that I cannot wait for, it is January 20th, 2029. Because on that day, when a new president is inaugurated, I am going to have an absolute fucking field day with every Democrat who told me that fascism is here in America and that Trump is a dictator and we're never going to have another election ever again. And I am going to find every single one of them and I am going to be ruthless. That's
I'm
what I will tell them.
excited to watch that
That's
happen
what I will
too,
do.
for sure.
So thank you so much, Amanda. I appreciate you coming
Thank
on
you.
and
Have a good
have a good weekend and we'll see you soon.